computer.
Here we
Okay,
go.
so we'll go ahead and kick it off. Let me admit a few more folks here.
Mhm.
So what we're going to cover today, like I mentioned, we're going to cover the bond DPA that we just launched. We'll talk about the updated lender compensation. We've got some FAQs that we've received and have compiled, so we'll go through those with you as well. And then really the majority of this training will be Q&A. So like I said, the first part of the training, about 20 minutes, and then the last 40 or so minutes will just be you guys talking to us, and we'll answer any questions that you might have. So first, let's jump into the new bond DPA that we just launched. It has really been going quickly. So I will tell you that it is limited in its availability. I'm anticipating that we will probably have funds for another 7 to 14 days. Just so you know, it has been very popular. Obviously, the interest rate on the first lien mortgage is 5.75, which is significant, significantly lower than our other non-bond DPA options, but also the market. And so it is offering a 4% down payment assistance attached to that. And it's only for government loan products, so FHA, USDA, or VA. It is offered to the borrower as a 3-year deferred forgivable second lien, which is just like the 3-year deferred forgivable second lien we've always had or have had for a long time. So the same criteria apply to that. If they sell, refinance, transfer within the initial 3-year period, they would owe that down payment assistance back to us in full. It is not prorated every year. So as long as they stay there for at least 3 years, it is fully forgiven. It cannot be combined with our mortgage credit certificate program. This is a question we've been getting a lot. Okay, so the MCC and the DPA from the bond are funded by the same source. So the mortgage revenue bonds are what funds both programs, and therefore you can't combine those two programs together because the government sees that as double dipping, if you will. So you can only do the bond DPA on its own, no MCC. Now, if you were to do the non-bond DPA version, that's funded through a different source of funding, and you can include the MCC on that. And I actually will go through a couple of those slides in a little bit to explain the benefits of an MCC. So again, like I mentioned, this is limited time only, limited funds available for this bond product. We're expecting, I'm guessing based on current reservation rates, that this will be available for another 7 to 14 days. A couple of other things. If the borrower is purchasing a home in a targeted area for the bond, a higher purchase price limit does apply, and the first-time homebuyer requirement is waived. So with the bond, you do have to be a first-time home buyer. A first-time home buyer is anyone who has had no ownership interest in a primary residence in the last 3 years. Oh, I have some animations that are going without me here. Also, the income limits that apply to this particular bond product are lower than our regular down payment assistance non-bond options. So it only applies to first-time home buyers that are at or below 80% of the area median family income. The targeted area, if they're buying a home in a targeted area, then a higher purchase price limit applies and the first-time home buyer requirement is waived. We do have ways for you to determine if a property is in a targeted area. On our website, you would go to the lenders section, which is circled here. I hope you can see that screenshot of our website. And then there's targeted area resources. We have an entire page for you to help determine whether or not a property is in a targeted area. Excuse me. Frank and I have both been fighting stuff. So we also have a way for you to determine if you're wanting to look for a property that's in a targeted area. We have a map, and it will help you zoom in on that map to see what streets are considered So sorry.
It's okay, Sarah.
Considered targeted. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to mention on this. So with the bond, I did say that we have limited funds available, correct? Thinking it's going to last between 7 and 14 days. However, we are required to make sure that this product is available in targeted areas for a full 12 months. So even though non-targeted area funds may be fully reserved in 7 to 14 days, this product will still be available for targeted areas for a full 12 months from the time we launched, which is February 1st. So until February of next year, that this product will be available in targeted areas to anyone that might be interested and qualifies. I wanted to show you, we have an updated income and purchase price limit chart that includes a new link at the bottom. You'll see where it says new bond DPA only. I mentioned that this product in particular has a lower income limit. It's for anyone at or below 80% of the area median family income. Got some more people coming in. And so therefore, you can click on that and it will show you what that income looks like for your particular county. This is a snapshot of what the income limit chart looks like, income and purchase price limit chart. So you'll look for the area of state or the counties and area. If you do not see the specific county that you're looking for listed on the chart, then you would look at the first line that says balance of state. Balance of state is for any county that's not specifically listed, and then you would just read across accordingly. Notice that this is for both non-targeted and targeted areas. The income limit stays the same regardless of where the property is located. And it's for any family size. So if it's a family of 1 or 2 or 3 or more, it's the same income limit across the board. And then we've got our purchase price limits here. We have been getting a lot of questions from folks as to whether or not we have any flexibility with these income limits and or purchase price limits, and we do not. And this is a government, mortgage revenue bond program. It's an IRS program. We have no flexibility on these limits that apply. I wish we did. Okay. Now we're going to go through some FAQs that we have kind of compiled over the years in anticipation of, launching this program. So we have been getting questions about what income is considered when determining the eligibility for the bond product. And that is household income of anyone that will end up on the deed of trust. So it's household income. If you've got, let's say I always give this example, maybe a 22-year-old right out of college, living at home, working full time, they will not likely end up on the deed of trust when you're buying a home. So we're not going to count their income. Another example would be maybe a parent or a grandparent living with you getting Social Security income. We wouldn't include that income either because they're not going to end up on the deed. The other question that we get is, well, self-employment or overtime, bonus, do I count, do I not count? There's an entire section in our guidelines, the appendix section, which is at the very end of our guides. And the appendix section is going to go through all those different scenarios. So if you're curious as to what you need to include or not include, hopefully that section will help you to, decide how to do that. Can you use the bond program with a conventional loan? No, it's only available on government. So FHA, USDA, or VA. Any additional fees? No, the same fees apply to the bond as they apply to all of our other down payment assistance products. And then no, the minimum credit score is 620. What additional documents are required by the borrower for the bond DPA? We have a few additions. It's going to be very similar to our MCC program. So if any of you use our MCC program a lot, then you'll know it's basically the same. We require 3 years tax returns. And we just sent out a notice last week, or no, I guess it was Monday. It's all been blurring together after the winter storm again. But if you're closing on or after February 15th, which is right around the corner, then we will require 2022 tax returns and or transcripts to be included in this file. And people are like, well, the deadline isn't until April. That's the IRS deadline, etc. We do realize this. We realize the complication, but this is a rule that is attached to mortgage revenue bond, IRS fund funds. It's a guideline, it's a rule that we have to follow. And so it's just part of it. So basically we won't be able to approve any package that doesn't have the 2022 tax returns in it if they're closing after February 15th. The tax exempt rider, that is an additional bond document that we don't normally have in our DPA files, the non-bond DPA files. So this is something that will be attached to and recorded with the first lien deed of trust. And that form can be found in the PDF doc section of the lender portal, which is where all your other forms are found when you're going through the normal reservation and compliance process. The notice of potential recapture tax, this is something that's provided both pre-closing and post-closing to the buyer. The recapture tax has to do with the funding as well. And it's essentially saying 3 things need to be met, all 3 or nothing happens. The first is they sell the home within 9 years. The second is they make a net profit on the sale after all parties are compensated. And then the third thing is that they sell the home, that their income increases by 5% above and beyond the income limit of their particular county when they purchased. If all 3 of those things happen, then they may owe a portion of the DPA back in the form of recapture tax. And then we do, supply that document. We have lots of resources available on our website that explain recapture tax. So if that's something that you're wanting, then we can provide that. What disclosures are required? We have complete TRID exemptions, so there's no additional disclosures required for the second lien that the DPA is provided to the borrower in that form. So the 3-year deferred forgivable second lien, there's no disclosure requirement for that particular second lien. No MIN number is needed for the second lien. It doesn't need to be registered with MERS. That is also something that's been out there for a long time. So same as it always has been with our 3-year deferred forgivable. So I think that goes through the FAQs. Now we're going to kind of pivot a little bit because I know that our bond DPA has been extremely popular. And I thought that we would be remiss if we didn't remind you that even though you may not be able to get a borrower in to use the bond DPA, you may not get a reservation in time. Don't be sad, because we want you to remember that you still have access to the MCC. The MCC is actually even more powerful than this bond DPA that we have right now. And I want to show you why. So to remind you what an MCC is, it's helping a borrower, a first-time home buyer, okay? That first-time home buyer that we talked about that hasn't had a ownership interest in a primary residence in the last 3 years. That first-time home buyer requirement is waived for veterans or those purchasing in a targeted area. But it helps the home buyer get 20% of the mortgage interest that they spend on their mortgage every year back as a tax credit. So it's like a 20% rebate on their mortgage interest.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Can you repeat it again? 20% off?
20% of the mortgage interest that they spend on their mortgage every year, they get back through this special tax credit. And again, every year. So it's like a 20% rebate on their mortgage interest. The loan officers, lenders, you can use that 20% whatever that equates to, as additional income when qualifying them for the loan. That may help lower their DTI. That may help them qualify for a little bit more home. So
Is there a cap limit for the credit?
there is no longer a cap for the MCC credit. It's whatever 20% equates to, which
And
can be huge with our interest rates the way they are right now, being higher, right? I'm going to show you, we used an example here. We have an MCC calculator on our website, and it goes through asking you the questions like, what's the loan amount? So in this example, we did a loan amount of 260, or a sales price of 260, and an interest rate of 6.875. The first year they'll save $35.58. Over 30 years, they're going to save $70,977 by using the MCC. But the best part is this next example. So I'm going to show it to you in a different way. Loan amount $260K, interest rate 6.875. The interest that they paid in that first full year is $17,875. 20% of that is $35.75. So if you look at this, you're effectively lowering this 6.875 rate to a 5.5, which is an even better deal than the 5.75 bond that we have right now. So just remember that this MCC, you'll always have access to this, and you can tack it on to whatever loan it is that you're wanting to offer them. You can combine this with our non-bond DPA options. Lenders, you can use this $3,575 as additional income when qualifying them for the mortgage. It's a win-win-win-win. So we're obviously not, directly lowering the interest rate, but in an essence, you're effectively getting a lower rate because you're getting 20% of that interest back. Huge benefit. So I just had to, while I had your attention, remind you, like, yes, it's sad. I know our bond DPA is going fast, but always remember you have the MCC, and may even get the borrower a better deal in the end with that. The next thing,
are there income limits on the?
Sorry?
Are there income limits to use the MCC?
Yes, there are income limits for the MCC. They are higher than the bond DPA that we have out there. And there's actually a special link to that income limit chart where I showed you, you could click on the bond DPA at the bottom. There's actually a link that takes you to the MCC or DPA, non-bond DPA, MCC combo income limits and purchase price limits. All right, so we'll go through this SRP change, lender compensation change, and then we will open it up to questions. I would love folks to ask their questions aloud so that we can answer them for you. And that way they'll be a part of the recording, and folks that weren't able to join us today will be able to hear everyone's Q&A. All right, so starting on 12/5 of last year, December 5th, 2022, we changed our lender compensation from 2.5% in servicing release premium to 1.5% in servicing release premium. And we allowed lenders to start charging up to a 1% origination charge or point. The reason that we did that is because of the rates being so volatile, the market being so volatile, we were having a really hard time putting down payment assistance options out there for folks to choose from. And so we started getting creative with our master servicer and thinking like, hey, what are some other HFAs across the country doing right now to make sure that we have down payment assistance options available for lenders and realtors and borrowers? And they were like, well, we have seen, some of these folks change their SRP to lenders. And so once we started to see the difference in rates that we were getting with this option, we decided, hey, we tracked it for, I would say, a good month before we decided to make the change. And it really expanded our DPA rate options by doing this. And so we've even seen that it's honestly spurred some competition that wasn't there before, that we have seen benefit the borrower and also the lender, I think, being able to serve more folks than they were before by having more rate options available, but also saying, hey, we're going to get the seller to cover this origination charge. We're going to get the seller to cover this 1%. And therefore, you're still getting the same amount of DPA that you would have otherwise at a better rate, a lower rate than you would have otherwise. And then we've also seen where lenders are trying to be competitive with each other and charging less than a 1% origination point. I know that doesn't necessarily get you to the same 2.5% in SRP that you would have made with our old structure, but those are some of the scenarios that we're seeing. And then, we wanted to get you guys all on the call. We've gotten some really positive feedback from some of our lender advisory council members, some of the lenders that do our program a lot, and they've provided us with some positive feedback. But we also wanted to, while we have almost 700 of you on the call, get some of your feedback on how it's going. So if anybody has some feedback they'd love to share, positive, negative scenarios, feel free.
I just have a question. Is this time for questions?
Yeah, please.
And I may be maybe thinking outside the box or whatever, but will there ever be an opportunity to buy down the rate on DPA? No.
So,
okay.
I don't think so. I mean, that's not something that really works with the way that our partnership with Lakeview is set up. So they're our investor as well, right? So Lakeview buys all the loans that lenders originate through our down payment assistance program, and they hedge for us. So they kind of say, hey, this is what we think when we pool these mortgages and sell them to investors, this is what we think we can make on that pool of mortgages. And that whole formula doesn't really work when people are buying down the rate, because then that affects them being able to sell it in the right pool on the back end. That makes sense. Explain that.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense. It makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I have a question for the compensation on the 4% DPA. This is the same way structuring the compensation from the lender than the regular. So basically the 1% that the origination fee, if we don't have any seller contribution or anything else, in essence, if there's no more seller contribution, then the borrower really gets 3% because we have to deduct the 1% origination fee if that's what we're charging. Is that correct?
Yes, in that scenario, that is correct.
Thank you.
And I hopped on a little bit late. And so this is Olga Ko. And so
Hi, Olga.
Hi. So first thing is program's been really good for us. We've been able to help a lot of borrowers. So super kudos to you guys. Thank you. Secondly, as I jumped on a couple of minutes late, just wanted to know, do we have an estimate on when the new program of the 5.75 could be going away, or how much funds are in there for that?
Yes, so I did provide an estimate of, I would say, between 7 and 14 days at the current reservation rate that we're seeing.
And to build
However,
on, go ahead. I think you were going to say what I was going to say. Go ahead.
I'll let you. They've heard enough from me.
So we've had a lot of the same questions. So just to kind of go through it, 7 to 14 days is the anticipated time and be available. But like Sarah mentioned earlier, we do have to make it available for targeted areas for at least 12 months. And Olga, I can't remember what part of the state you're in, but if you're in the El Paso area, I always say the majority of El Paso is targeted. There's a lot of targeted areas out there if you use our targeted map resources, which I'll send to you guys. And within that targeted area resource, you'll be able to see where it would be available for the next 12 months. But currently just regular non-targeted 7 to 14 days.
What's the income requirements for the MCC?
Okay, so I was getting a lot of income questions. I'm going to ask all of you to go to our website, click lenders at the top, income limits and guidelines, and just pull up the income limits for me. It'll have the 4 links on it, and it's separated by county. So every single county in Texas has their own income limit. So we're going to go back to it. There we go. So this is there we go. So when you get to the income limit,
Yeah, lenders, and then click on income limits and guidelines. And that will bring you to where it says income and purchase price limits. And this is the chart you'll see.
and you'll be able to access whatever limits you want. And just to answer a couple more questions about that, the MCC income limits are different than the bond limits. You see them there. And when you calculate whether you're doing the MCC or the bond program, it's household income. So to reiterate, that's people who will own the home. That does not include co-signers or co-borrowers. It's people who will own the home and be on the deed. That's the income that needs to be counted, and that's their total household income, which would include bonus, overtime, all that good stuff.
Question, does TSAHC allow non-occupant borrowers?
Yes.
Thank you, appreciate it.
So you mentioned that the on the DPA 4% not able to combine with MCC, but we are able to combine it with the regular TSAHC down payment assistance, correct?
Yes, and we hope that you will. It's definitely a program that I feel people are a little bit more reserved toward because they don't fully understand it. But like I was saying, if you're not even able, I know that everyone's been super excited about this 5.75 4% bond that we just launched, and it's going quickly. But if you add an MCC to some of our non-bond products, you actually even get a better rate than what the bond is currently offering. So just make sure that you're considering that.
Just for feedback, I had it on my first home.
Yay.
I actually refinanced someone that was able to keep it, because now you can keep it if you refinance and you petition that. So it is a great program to add on every loan if possible.
Exactly. Yes, we're hoping that folks really start adding it first, and then if it doesn't work, take it off. But don't just assume that it's not going to work. You should.
I have a question.
What is the interest? Question for Sarah and Mike. If in Texas, the spouse is always on the deed of trust. So if the spouse has an income source, but we're not using her as a co-borrower, let's say it's a spouse, it's a lady, or it could be a man, whatever. Does her income included in the underwrite? In the income, the total income, household income?
So for the bond and MCC,
and Texas is going to be the deed.
Because they will both be on the deed. So
Right, so you can't avoid a spouse that's not on title. I mean, not on the loan when they have income.
Not when they're going to be on the deed for the bond and the MCC program, but for the non-bond DPA that's sourced differently, we don't include non-purchasing spouses if it's not included on the qualifying side, on the qualifying income.
I have a question.
Yes.
So in a situation where somebody's using the 4% down payment assistance and the borrower did get the seller to contribute 6% towards the purchase, like on a regular FHA loan, can we still use that?
Yes, absolutely. That would be an ideal situation. We follow loan product guidelines when it comes to seller contributions. So whatever the loan product allows, we also allow.
Okay. And another question following that. I know on some FHA loans, we're able to do just the W-2 only loan. Are we able to do this with this 4%?
So
I think that you need the 3-year taxes. I think if that's
right.
No, I'm not talking about MCC. MCC is where you need the 3-year tax return. I'm talking about the 4% bond.
The bond has the same requirements as the MCC.
Okay, so we're not.
When it comes to income and verifying income and 3 years tax returns, because they're using the same funding source.
Okay.
I have a follow-up question regarding her question. I'm having some discrepancy between lenders in regards whenever we have seller contributions towards closing. So for example's sake, if I have the seller contributing the full 3.5% towards their closing, which is all that's required for an FHA, the 4% that they would be eligible from TSAHC, where does those funds go? I have some lenders saying that the buyer can use those funds, that would go directly to their account to cover repairs or, the note, and others saying it's a use it or lose it situation.
So there's three things that you can use our down payment assistance for. One is the down payment. 2 is closing costs. 3 is a combination of those 2 or principal reduction.
Okay.
In none of those scenarios would you lose it. But you cannot, the only money that a borrower can get back is their earnest money or anything that they've paid outside of closing.
Because I have a couple people I want to call on that have been waiting patiently. I'm going to get to you, I promise. One thing I want to reiterate, we offer non-bond and now just recently a bond DPA program. If you've ever used the program in the past, it has been non-bond. It's been years since we've offered a bond. Don't get confused about that part. And non-bond programs, what makes them so amazing, besides the fact they can be combined with an MCC, is that they're TBA mortgages. The rate changes daily, the availability changes daily. It's not a matter of it running out of funding. Depends on what the market decides and what we can offer it. And we work with our partners to decide what we can offer that day. Because it's non-bond, you're just dealing with TSAHC. Frank and Sarah, it's a lovely time. You don't have to deal with the IRS at all. Think about it that way. Non-bond is just Frank and Sarah. You just give me the normal documents, no tax returns needed. When you get the bond or the MCC involved, the IRS is involved, and that's when we need those tax returns, household income. So think about it that way. Separate non-bond from bond and non-bond.
The tax returns,
relief.
the tax returns are really only used to verify first-time homebuyer status. We're not using those tax returns to verify income.
So if I don't mind, can I call on Benny? Benny has been very patient. Benny, has your question been answered?
Yeah, my question has been answered, but just listening to you talk about the non-bond and the bond, it did explain more to me what I was afraid of or what I was thinking in my head. Then it kind of opened up more room for another question, which is on the non-bond situation. Okay, she said the tax return is only to verify their first-time home buyer status. However, this client that I'm working with right now, he's a first-time home buyer, does have a W-2 income, but hasn't had time to file his taxes yet. So that was his issue, and he wanted to get on the 4% bond program because of the rates.
Well, just to be...
The government doesn't like to give out money to those that have not filed their income tax returns.
Correct. So just to be clear.
And on the non-bond, are we able to buy the rates down?
There's no rate buy downs at all. Please, no rate buy downs at all at this time. There's no rate buy downs.
Mike, did you say that a non-bond loan with MCC does not need tax returns?
No, that's what I'm saying. Non-bond by itself does not need tax returns because you're just dealing with TSAHC. But if you involve,
there's no such thing as a non-bond MCC loan with no tax returns. It's going to be if you use MCC, it's a bond loan.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So we had a couple more questions about MCC I wanted to get to. Someone mentioned a cap. Just to reiterate, I don't want you guys leaving here thinking there's a cap. There's no cap. It's 20% of the interest rate. The cap applies to different credit rates other than 20%. Because our credit rate is 20%, there's no cap for our MCC program. Someone also asked a question about whether or not they get that income. How would they get it? To fully explain the process, when you close with an MCC, it has to be added before you close. And then once you've closed and all your documentation has been submitted and approved, we then mail out a physical certificate to the home buyer, which they type in when they file their taxes online. It saves it, and they can throw that piece of paper away. They never need it again. Okay? And TurboTax will just automatically reapply it every time they go to file their taxes. There's nothing you need to do unless they call you and need a copy of it for some reason. We take care of sending that out to them. If they wanted to get that credit, every single time they get paid or monthly, they would have to consult with the CPA. We do not advise them on how to get that credit monthly. If they want to get it yearly, though, you just file your taxes and you get it yearly. It's far as how long the turn time is, I got a lot of questions about that. TSAHC only takes around 1 to 2 business days to fully review and approve a file. It truly depends on how long it takes you to get the documents to us, which include tax returns. So if tax returns are required, your file will not be approved until that's been provided. And if there's a delay, you may have to pay an extension fee if you're doing the bond or non-bond DPA with MCC programs. Okay, so please be prepared. If you're locking it in anyway with no taxes filed, there may be extension fees have to be paid if you don't actually have those taxes filed in the right time. A lot of questions.
I wanted to interject something real quick. For a buyer to be able to get their the MCC monthly, they actually just have to file an updated W-4 form with their employer.
I 100% understand, but
However,
it changes every year.
Sorry, Frank.
No, it changes
I
every
just wanted
year.
to address that because we get that question a lot. It's not that simple. I mean, yes, they can submit an updated W-4 with their employer. However, there's really only certain exemptions that they can choose, right? So they can go from a 0 to a 1 to a 2. How does that affect what's being withheld from their paycheck to cover their tax liability at the end of the year? It may not be exactly the same amount that their MCC will equate to be. And that's where we don't want people getting stuck with a tax bill at the end of the year that they weren't expecting because they didn't have enough set aside to cover that, thinking that the MCC would just automatically cover everything, right? That they're not withholding from their paycheck. And so that's where we're like, hey, you really need to know if you go from a 0 to a 1 or a 1 to a 2, how's that going to affect your tax bill at the end of the year? And how will the MCC help you cover that tax bill? Will it fully cover it or will it not be enough? And you'll have to come to the table with some money at the end of the year. So that's why we say that it's more complicated than just updating it.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Sarah, Frank, I just want to add something super fast. I see a lot of the MCC questions coming in here, and I just want to remind folks, excuse me, that the mortgage credit certificate is only there to offset tax liability. So if the borrowers don't owe as much taxes as they would get with the MCC, then it's only going to offset what they owe. However, if they did have leftovers, then that can carry forward for up to 3 years. But no, that is one of the questions that we get quite a bit from a qualifying standpoint of adding back the MCC credit for qualifying income. Part of the reason we look at the tax returns is we have to make sure that the borrowers actually have a tax liability to offset. So just an important little asterisk note to put in there.
Thank you for mentioning that, John. Very important point.
Hey, Mike and Sarah, can you guys backtrack a few slides to the income limitation screen? My question is I'm looking at this going, okay, what's the income limit? And then there is the AMFI. So the AMFI is already the figure there. Or do I have to do the math myself and take the total income divided times 80% and figure that out?
No math required. The chart is the income limit. That is
for example, if I'm in Andrews County, the AMFI is 74,560. So, but is that the maximum income? Even if I didn't want to do, even if I'm trying to get someone qualified over the 80% limit?
No, so every program has its own chart. This particular chart that I was demonstrating is just for the bond.
Okay, so this is really that 6-page income. You just gotta keep scrolling down to the other areas. Okay. Yeah. All right, I get it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anyone have any feedback on the updated lender compensation? We kind of got distracted with Q&A, but I wanted to go back to that real quick just so that we could hear from folks.
I have a question. So that 1%, is that only for the bond DPA or could that be applied on the other TSAHC DPA programs?
It's across the board.
It's across the board. Okay. And so there's also that 0.5 point that has to be charged if they're below a certain credit score, correct?
That's correct. So ultimately you could charge up to 1.5 on those files.
Okay, got it.
May I ask a question, please? This is Patty Kessler.
Yes.
Hi, and thanks for having this. I had a quick question about rental income for the property, for a multifamily property. You have in your guidelines that it had to have been occupied or something for 5 years, or showing how would, if somebody's buying on FHA and using the income to qualify them with that, you know, with a rental income, if they're occupying one side and the other side they're renting out, there was really no, I mean, I just hadn't seen that before, and I do a lot of DPAs in Atlanta, so.
I think you're referring to the like multi-unit properties having to be deemed residential for the previous 5 years. So what that means is like they can't have been commercial properties.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that's what I was thinking. And then I have one more question about the at closing. You do allow principal curtailment or whatever you want to call it to not have too much money back at closing.
Yes, they can get anything they paid outside of closing back. So like earnest money, or maybe they paid for credit report fees or appraisal fees, things like that. And then anything in addition to that could be, yes, the principal reduction.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Does that include inspection fee?
If they pay it outside of closing, they can get it back.
Okay, this is Laura Austin. I have a question. So if somebody had their closed on a property last year and received the MCC, would they be at a 2,000 cap or the 20%? Or does the 20% start for everybody who's had MCC in the past?
Yeah, we've had the 20% credit rate
20%?
for, I would say, 5 to 6 years. Maybe around.
Right. I'm about to hit 5 years in May. So when I started, it was just changing from 40% to 20%. So right at
I
about
think it's been 5 or so years. So they closed last year, they have the 20% rate.
20% if they close. So
and there's no cap. So that means there's no cap.
Okay, so anybody who's had the MCC in, say, the past 5 years would switch over to the 20%?
So just to be clear, if they received their MCC from TSAHC in the last 5 years, they would have 20%. Other organizations have other credit rates. So if they got it from TDHCA, Seth, they could have a completely different credit rate and they may have a cap.
Okay, all righty, good deal.
Can I ask a question, please? Is the 5.75% interest rate in the targeted area is going to remain for 12 months?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it will, Bill. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
So this is where I do just a couple more quick questions that were sent in the chat. I'll read them out. If someone buys another house, but they want to use, if someone owns a home and they want to use our non-bond DPA program, can they do that? Yes. You could have owned a home in the past, you could own a home currently and still use the non-bond DPA program by itself, because there's no first-time home buyer requirement for just non-bond DPA. So I always like to say you could be married to Oprah and still use the non-bond DPA program if she's not on the loan, because you don't have to include household income. We're just going off of just who's on the application for non-bond DPA. So that's one quick thing. Someone asked about tax returns for someone who wasn't required to file, or if someone was a dependent of someone else. On our program affidavit, if someone was not required to file taxes, you just check those years that they weren't required to file. That's it. There's nothing else you need to do outside of that. For tax returns for 2022, do we request transcripts or do we want the actual returns? We accept both. It'll be kind of hard to have the transcripts already if they just recently filed. So we accept signed returns and transcripts. One last thing, household income, just to reiterate, because we get a lot of questions about this, is for bond and MCC programs. Household income is anyone who will own the home, not children, Not people that are older living in the home that won't own it. Just people who will own it. If you're married, that's both of you guys. Okay.
And still no feedback on the SRP.
We can have other questions. We got to
We're
get.
so curious though. I just want to know, I mean, are y'all finding it great?
Can you go to the screen that shows this is a non-bond guidelines? These over here are bond guidelines.
You go back to the income limit chart. They want to see the income limit page, sir.
That's what it is, huh? Okay.
It's on the income limit page where we separate it out. And guys, when you get to the income limits, if you're in El Paso, if you're in Raymondville, if you're somewhere that's not, your county isn't specifically listed, it's fine. You use that first row that says all counties not specifically listed here, use limits on this row. So if you don't see your county specifically, it's there. Yes.
You said earlier the targeted areas, and there's a map.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys toggle real quick to that, how to get to that map and show us? Yeah, I want to see what that looks like real quick. Thanks.
Hey,
You're
Frank,
gonna go
well,
to
seriously,
the website, and you'll go to the lenders tab at the top, and it gives you a drop-down menu. And off to the left, you'll see it says targeted area resources. And there is the map is listed there.
Sure. One of the questions was, what is the website address? So you might want to tell them what that is.
Oh, okay. TSAHC.org. So TSAHC.org.
So the SRP, just so I'm understanding that correctly, as a lender, we are getting paid compensated 1.5. And if we choose to add up to 1% or discount that, that's just additional. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then on the tax returns, I know the tax returns prove home ownership in the past 3 years. Does a tax transcript provide the same information or no?
Yes.
Okay, so it can be either or, like it doesn't have
Be
to be
either or tax return
okay.
and or transcript.
Because I was looking at transcripts trying to figure out where it says on there, home, like how does it prove there's a homeowner in there? But I
We
don't.
look for them taking the mortgage interest tax deduction.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, my
Sarah,
name's
can I
Marcus.
jump in?
Oh, let's have a quick
Can I
question.
jump-
I'm sorry,
Okay.
is
I
this
wanna-
PowerPoint
yeah,
presentation going to be available, like, or can be emailed to us or something?
I am going to email the recorded version of this training to everyone.
Okay, all right.
hey, Frank, hey,
Sarah, I
Sarah,
wanna
if
jump
I
in.
wanted to, I'm sorry.
I want to jump in.
Vicki, go for
Yeah,
it.
let me jump in about the origination fee. I want to make sure that everybody hears this part. If the FICO score is between 620 and 639 on a government loan, there's an additional 0.5 point fee for the low FICO. So you are able to charge the 1 point loan origination fee and the 0.5 point. So you'd be charging 1.5 origination fee in that case. If you don't charge that 0.5 point fee towards origination, then your corporate office is going to have to pay for that, and they may not be happy about that. So don't forget, FICO is between 620 and 639. There's an additional 0.5 point that you want to charge to the borrower to pass that on, and you have to charge it as origination.
Hey, Frank, hey, Sarah, if I'm a mortgage professional, is there any training I need to take, or how can I get on your mailing list?
Ooh, my guy. I was going to save that. But please, I beg all of you. We have a wonderful training that is required for all loan officers before you start originating our files and talking to home buyers about our programs. I'll post a link in the chat so you guys have it. But if you click lenders and go to lender training, you sign up, create your own username and password. And if you haven't done it in the last 6 months, please take it again. If it's been over a year, please take it again. We update it often. It's a great refresher. It's not going to take but a couple minutes, maybe an hour for you to go through it. It's a great refresher, John. Thank you so much. And it's required before your admin will give you access to our programs if you don't currently have access. So you're supposed to have to take training no matter what before you even get to offer the programs. It's mandatory. I'll post a link in a second. Thanks, John.
And as a loan officer, that's just module 1, right?
Yep, just module 1 as a loan officer and module 2 if you're a processor or underwriter.
When you do sign up for our training, you'll automatically be added to our distribution list to receive updates interest rate update emails, programmatic updates. If you've already taken our training and you're not getting those emails, shoot us an email to the homeownership@tshac.org address that you see on the screen. We have links in our signature line, so I'll probably just reply back to you and say, yes, please do sign up using the link in my signature line. All right, guys, we're kind of nearing the top of the hour here. We had it scheduled for an hour until 11. So are there any other questions that you'd like to ask while we're still here?
No, but thank y'all so much for doing this.
One question for me, please.
Yes, please.
Claudia Estrella with No One Hears. I was wondering, for a VA loan, I see that it is free for heroes when they combine it with the down payment assistance for the MCC. Is there any way that they can take advantage only for the MCC without the down payment assistance?
They can do the MCC by itself, absolutely.
Even if it's not first-time home buyer?
They have to be a first-time home buyer unless, if they're a veteran, I believe that was part of your question. If they're a veteran, they don't have to be a first-time home buyer to use the MCC. So they can use it in combination with their down payment assistance, or they can use it by itself in combination with another loan that you or a lender is wanting to offer them.
Because I saw a little thing that says free for heroes when combined with the down payment assistance. So does that mean that he will have to pay something to just use?
Yes, there is a $500 issuance fee attached to the MCC program.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That's so helpful. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah,
So they'll basically more than recover that in their first year of using an MCC.
Can the DPA be used to cover that MCC amount on a non-bonded?
The DPA can be used to cover down payment closing costs. So I guess in a roundabout way, that $500 issuance fee is part of their closing costs, but it's not directly offsetting it, if that makes sense.
This is Brian.
There's a lot of other questions in here that have not been answered. How will they get their questions answered after the call's over if it wasn't addressed while we were chatting?
Oh, well, I mean, we were hoping to address all the questions. So if your question hasn't been addressed, it is difficult to keep up with in the chat sometimes. So if your question hasn't been addressed, please answer or, ask it aloud so that everyone can hear, and then they'll hear our response as well.
Quick clarification. On the tax returns, you mentioned at one point signed, and then you also said transcripts. Obviously, transcripts won't be signed. When you're saying signed, if people are filing electronically, do they need to physically print and wet sign the front of their tax return? I know in the MCC, I believe it requires a wet signature.
If they're not electronically signed, when they file them online, then yes, they would have to print them out and do a wet signature. But I believe the last time I viewed mine, they're electronically signed.
Right. I did one recently, one for the verified home ownership. I don't believe it needed to be signed, but they were using MCC. So MCC required a signature itself, a wet signature, but they filed electronically. So I just wanted to clarify, get that clarified. And I have a quick question. If they're doing a DPA and it's a 203K, is that DPA based off the after repair appraisal value?
So we only, go for it, Frank.
So our DPA is always based on loan amount, not sales price, which is why you can have as much as a gift as you want from outside of the file, and the DPA will always be given as a percentage of your total loan amount, not the sales price. And then for our program, only a limited 203K is allowed. We don't do the full.
Right. I got that. Okay. All right.
Not a problem. I did see a couple questions that I have written down from the chat that I just wanted to get to. Someone had a great question about asking if the bond is for heroes only. So that was a previous bond that we offered. The last one 5 years ago was a heroes only bond. That's not the case. This bond program is for everyone. Whether you're a hero or not, you can apply for the bond program currently. Someone asked about the 20% rebate from that MCC, and if that income that it gives, is that included as income on your loan application? Answer to that is no. It's also a great question. If you're getting that credit from that MCC, you can count it as income when you're on that 1003, when you're running them through the system, but you don't have to include it as actual income on a 1003 to kind of disqualify them from the program. That's what we don't want. We don't want the MCC income to also disqualify them from the MCC program.
In that MCC change, that's retroactive. So if they had MCC prior, there's no limit for people who already had MCC prior.
No, sir. It goes by your issuance date and what you received when you were issued. So if you previously had a cap, you still have that cap. We had a question about if you refinance. So yes, as long as you still live in that home, if you refinance, there's actually an application on our website to reissue and refinance your MCC as well. You keep it. The thing is that you can't just keep doing cash out refinances the rest of your life and keep it forever. It's still only valid for that 30-year term that it was originally valid for.
So on the refinance, would it be under the original rules or would it be under the new no cap?
It would still be under whatever you were originally issued.
A question. Are these bonds for resale only or is new builds included? Can they be included on new builds?
New builds are included.
Okay, thank you.
I'm confused. I thought you said earlier that if you, let's say we're on the cap on the MCC and now you're doing the 20%, that it would switch over to the 20%. But I thought I just heard you say that if you got the 20%, then it sticks with the 20%.
That's correct. So it's whatever
yeah.
you were issued. It's whatever, when you applied for the MCC at the time you were closing on your loan, there would have been a credit rate attached to that MCC. And that credit rate stays the same for the life of the MCC. Whatever you were
So if
issued.
they had the cap of 2,000, they will always have the cap of 2,000. Okay, because I thought you said earlier that it, we would go 5 years back or whatever it changes to.
No, we were saying that we've had the 20% credit rate here at TSAHC with our MCC program for at least 5 years. So anyone that has gotten an MCC with us in the last 5 years or so has the 20% rate.
Okay.
Is there any
Thank
special training? Is there any special training for closers?
Yes, module 3 of our training is for closers and shippers. So I have a couple more chat questions to get to. This should be the last ones of those. We have someone want to go over pricing for 4% DPA. Are they really getting 4%? Well, just kind of going back to what they were saying, what we were talking about earlier, there is a 1% origination charge if you're using our down payment assistance program, as well as 0.5 for 620. Ms. Daphne, can you please mute yourself?
I just muted.
You mute her? Awesome. So there's that 1% and also that 0.5 for someone between 620 and 639. But kind of going off what me and Sarah were talking about earlier, as I've traveled around and asked different people about it, I've seen realtors advertise their own form of assistance where they cover that 1% and they're advertising it as their own assistance program. So there's all kind of ways that a realtor and a lender can team up and say that they offer some sort of assistance to cover that 1%. And I personally would advertise that as a way to kind of bring in more business knowing about the change. But yes, it does affect how much money they receive if nobody helps them out. There's no seller concessions, no realtor concessions. It does affect how much DPA they receive. And then I had one quick question. Someone asked if they locked in the bond, the home buyer hadn't filed taxes, what's the result? So just to reiterate, once you lock in on that bond, you have 60 days once a loan is locked in our system to have the loan closed and sold. So within that 60-day time frame, once you locked, the home buyer has to have filed taxes and have them submitted in order for the loan to be purchasable by our partners at Lakeview. So if you're not able to get that done in that time, there will be extension fees charged at that point. If you're just doing an MCC by itself, it's a little different because you can sell the loan anywhere, but now you're just dealing directly with the MCC department and begging them to let them keep your file. Okay, so you want to make sure you're advising people. They're getting the bond or an MCC, they need to file their taxes now They're not self-employed. It should take 2 days. What's the big deal?
Quick question. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jose.
Okay. Yes. So I have a client that put an offer on a house. We locked it. Now, before the option period was over, they backed out because there were some issues with the property. How long will this be locked if they decide to go with another property?
60 days from the time you lock. And like Frank was saying, the loan needs to be sold to Lakeview Loan Servicing by that 60th day. If it's not sold, there are options for you to extend the file, and it may be to the homebuyer's benefit to pay the extension fees, especially if you've locked our bond DPA at the 5.75 rate. It may even be in their benefit to pay those extension fees to keep that particular interest rate on that loan, because it's cheaper in the long run than getting, maybe a 7-something interest rate. So yeah, 60 days, and then you have the option to extend from there.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Is the bonded DPA funded amounts that are remaining based on application dates or closing dates? By that,
I'm sorry, say that.
The bonded DPA eligibility, the availability, is it based on application date or closing date?
Yes, reservation date. Yes.
We also had a question about that, just to kind of get deeper into that. You don't have the bond locked on our end until you have an actual reservation in the system. So if you get everything rolling on your end and don't lock it in our system, if the program runs out, it won't be available for you, and you'd have to restructure things on that end. So just throwing that out there, that you don't actually have the bond locked until you actually lock it in our system and begin that 60 days.
Just a quick question. The 1% origination fee is the loan amount, right?
1% origination? Yes.
Yes.
It's charged on the CD.
Okay, perfect.
And great question, Jennifer. Just to reiterate, only the bond program and only the MCC program are for first-time home buyers. The non-bond DPA program is for everybody. Don't forget, you can be married to Oprah and use non-bond DPA tomorrow. It's okay. Okay.
And be buying your primary residence and not a vacation home.
Correct.
If you're married to Oprah.
Has to be your primary residence for the two of you, right? And then when you're talking about the first-time home buyer requirement in general, even if I currently own the home right now, if I move to another country for 3 years or rent an apartment for 3 years, I then become a first-time home buyer again, which is why we're looking at that 3 years of tax returns, even if you owned a home. But if your primary residence has been an apartment for 3 years, you're a first-time home buyer again. So that's why it's important that we have those tax returns.
In your example, being married to Oprah, that you still have the income limits, right?
Still have an income limit, but only your income limit if she's not on the loan. And I work at a nonprofit, so I qualify.
Okay, I still
I was
have
going
some.
to say, if you're married to Oprah, you're probably paying cash for the loan, but but Frank, I did want to, there is a question here that I thought was interesting for everybody. If I have a current loan already disclosed, so they've taken the loan app, they've done their LE, they've disclosed the loan, and then a week or 2 or 3 later, they want to add the MCC because maybe they forgot about it for whatever reason. Can they add the MCC in the middle of the transaction?
Yes, of course,
They
please.
can. They definitely can. The one caveat to that is it may change the paperwork that they've already completed, and they would need to redo some of the paperwork.
So that would be considered a valid change of circumstance as a borrower requested change.
Yes.
Thank you for saying that, John, because I've been asked that question before and they made it seem like the borrower couldn't request a change. But a borrower requested change is approved. Thank you for saying that.
Quick question, guys. So I actually myself had the MCC 3 years ago, the 20%, and I'm filing my, property taxes, and I take the proper form from the IRS and all this, but I don't understand really like where actually I will see that credit, because I don't see it anywhere. So I know it's there, and that's the reason why, I have it and I apply for it, but where actually people can see that?
Ew. So if they're not printing out their returns themselves, let me stop saying that name. Their online tax preparer should show them the change whenever, or should show you the change. I know it happens when I type in my MCC information, but that also depends on your tax liability and your current tax situation. I could see where, depending on what kind of credits you already have, that maybe if you have enough other credits that the MCC doesn't immediately reflect when you enter it in personally. But as someone with no kids, I see it immediately. As soon as I type it in, I see an immediate benefit. So it can be different depending on your liability and your credit situation. But it's a lifetime credit. So even if you don't get all of it right now, remember, it saves up to 3 years and it can roll over, and you can continue claiming that credit if there's kids in the home, when they move out, that kind of thing.
Frank, quick question.
Clients can print out a certificate.
The certificate can be found in the lender portal. So once you help a home buyer get one, you can actually log into the lender portal after they close and just print it out for them if they need a copy.
Frank, quick question. I'm doing a home buyer class. Can you guys, you or Sarah, can you guys participate in that and provide some of this information to them? Do you guys do that?
So, I mean, I'll kind of step in there and explain. It's just Frank and I for the whole state of Texas.
Oh, wow. Sorry.
So we really, no, I mean, we want to do that stuff, but we've really noticed that it makes more of an impact if we focus our efforts on lenders and realtors and educating them. But we do have a train the trainer webinar on our website that you can take, and it will give you access to all of our slide decks that we created for home buyers, Texas Heroes. There's Spanish slide decks in there. All of them have scripts on them, so you can follow along on what to say on each slide.
Oh, great.
So I would just recommend that you do that. We want to empower folks. We also want to take us out of the middle, because really the home buyer wants to work with a realtor and a lender. They're the ones that are their point people, their contacts for the process. So if the lender and the realtor are the ones teaching that home buyer about the program, then the home buyer is going to see the lender and realtor as the expert on the program, versus when we teach them, then they come to us instead of the realtor or the lender that's hosting the class. And so we feel like we kind of got in the middle of that relationship when it should just be a direct relationship to start. So it's better for you to teach the class in the end.
Okay, so it's Train the Trainer's presentation is what it's called.
Yep, I'll post a link in 2 seconds.
Great, thank you.
All right, guys, I think we're gonna try to wrap it up. We're about 15 minutes overdue, or past the time. And so, I'm gonna send out the recording to everybody that registered, regardless of attendance. And then you can always reference this going forward. You can share it with folks that you knew were wanting to attend and couldn't. And then if you still have questions, call us, email us. I feel like Frank and I do a really good job at responding in a timely manner to emails and voice messages. We don't always pick up the phone right away. I know Frank is better at that, but I feel like I'm in more meetings than Frank. So, but when I get back, I try to return my calls by the end of the day or the next day. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your interest. Thank you, Vicki and John, for helping us out today. Thank you, Frank, for helping me out today. And we'll wrap it up and we'll talk soon. All have a good day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Sarah. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Nice seeing y'all. Take care.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Too late to still ask another question?
Oh, I'm here for you, Sai. If you give me 2 seconds, I'll answer it. You got to make it quick. What you got?
Okay. If I have a teacher that is retired, is she still considered a hero?
You have to be actively and currently employed in the profession to be considered a hero, but it doesn't matter. Everyone can use our programs.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Frank.
You're welcome.
Hey, Frank, before you go, I had a quick question. I know you're laughing because you want to go too. Trust me, I do too. And by the way, I